All right, with me here today is my Uncle Jim, who is the Golden Glove's first son. Now, as you know, Uncle Jim, I am from the nonprofit group called the Katalysts, and I'm here to interview about who I know as the Golden Glove. Now, my first question for you, Uncle Jim, is when Granddad was young, now I want to retain back to how he got his name, the Golden Glove. What was his, let's say, experience in the boxing entertainment business?
Okay, well, my father grew up in Belleville, and it was a fairly rough district he grew up in. And having to deal with a lot of the young lads in trouble down there, he joined into a boxing group down there. And it was soon apparent that he was fairly good at it, so he worked his way towards a Golden Glove with trainers in that Belleville area, and he became very proficient at it, and so much so that in later years sometimes he was used as a bouncer for places. Now this is, from what I've heard, his stories he's told me, and his brothers and sisters had told me about him, but apparently he was very, very good at it, and in later life I got to see that a few times.
That's great. I would have loved to have been there or seen some footage of it. Now, while he was in training to get his Golden Gloves, what other community services did he do? I heard that he also volunteered for the Salvation Army.
Yes, he was a member of the Salvation Army. Between him and his brother, they played almost every instrument in the Salvation Army. They did some work at Christmas time helping collect for the Salvation Army and the soup lines like that. And he was very adamant about, being good towards the community that he lived in.
So it'd be fair to say that he felt strongly about helping his fellow man and doing things for his community and helping out those in need?
Yes, that's true. Like he was not in any way a fighter type person. He didn't want to fight unless something was pushed on him, and he didn't like, or if he saw someone else being wrongly picked on, then he would step in. But that wasn't his first priority. Like he said, he liked helping the community out and working with people that needed it.
That's great news. And as you know, I'm very inspired by your father and my granddad, the Golden Glove. My second question for you, maybe third one by this time actually. Now he got later into his years. What were some of the things that he would go out into his community and do? I heard that he'd stop for stranded motorists and help them jack up their car and put on a new tire for them. Was there anything else that he would do to help people in need or other community members?
Well, as I said before, being with his qualifications, he quite often worked during his layoff periods. He worked as a bouncer in some of the local hotels and areas like that. And quite often he would meet people in there that would need a ride or needed help at home. He would come out and help them with things like that. As I was growing up as a child, sometimes he took me with him a few times to help do stuff like that.
That's good. Now, you have a story that I was just listening to in the kitchen there. Could you regale the viewers again with that story?
Well, yeah, there was a certain incident where I was old enough at the time. I was able to go to the hotel. I was 22 at the time, and he was there. And it was one of the nights he was bouncing, as I say, as a bouncer, making sure the crowd was handling themselves. And there was one young lad that was quite well known in Newcastle as a fighter. Not very many people would want to stand up against him. Most backed down against him. But the guy was making quite a mess of himself and picking on a few people and making remarks to women. So my father asked him to, politely get up and leave. He'd been warned once and asked him to politely leave. And he asked, what do you think, who's going to put me out? And father said, well, if it comes to that point, I will. And he said, but if it comes to that point and I have to put you out, he said, then you will not be allowed to come back in again for a year or more, and your name will be blacklisted. So the young lad said, well, that's, you think you're pretty tough that way. He says, you think you can do it? My father said, well, I can certainly do it, but he said, do you want to go that route? And he said, well, tell you what, he said, you talk big in here, how about we step out in the parking lot and settle this? And my father said, well, that's fine with me if you want to do it. And he said, well, what'll happen if we get in a fight out there? And my father said, well, it won't be the hotel. doing anything to you, it'll be me. He laughed at my father, said, well, let's go. So they went outside. They squared off in the parking lot. He took a rapid swing at my father. My father just dodged his head to the side, and with just one quick left hand, come up and hit him right on the end of the chin. The guy's head snapped back, come forward. All you can see the whites of his eyes for a moment. His knees buckled. Down he went. His friends picked him up, put him in the car, and took him home. The next day, he came back, and he apologized to my father and thanked him for not letting him be on the blacklist. But the stories I hear from the brothers and sisters of this guy is that when they did come to, he figured someone had hit him from the side or snuck in, and it wasn't my father that did it. It was so fast. But they said, no, you just didn't see it coming as fast as we did.
That's pretty good.
And from that point on, there were a few times when people would start to say something, and they said, well, look, if you keep that up, we'll have Chuck take you out. And after that episode, nobody wanted to really challenge him.
So he's really good at his job as a bouncer, and he's really diligent about making sure the patrons of the bar were fairly treated and not
yes,
bothered. That's good.
True. And that carried on to several things. Like he was well known for being fair, and that's what they liked about him. They gave him the jobs doing things like that because he was so fair about it. He would like to talk them down and say, this is the trouble you're going to be into if you keep this up, and if we just be fair about it, you won't have this problem.
Good. Now, I have one more kind of incident similar to that I've heard about through our other family members. There was a moment with Granddad and Nan about they're sitting down at a restaurant, and apparently some fellow outside the restaurant was making some sort of rude gestures or remarks towards Nan, and Granddad, I heard that he punched through the restaurant window and dealt with him pretty swiftly. Are you aware of that story, and what else do you know? That
one, like I said, I heard that myself from the side, and from the people I heard that sounded reliable, but like I said, that was only from someone else's point of view. I hadn't seen it, but I did hear about it. Yes, that had happened. All right, so the details about that, they were sitting down at a restaurant, and some gentleman outside was causing some sort of commotion. Yes, he was being very, very extremely rude, yes. Being extremely rude, making obscene gestures at your mom and my Nan. Yes. And what did you hear Granddad did about that? The guy was making faces in the window and making threatening gestures, and Father just punched him right straight through the window. Yeah, so he didn't take kindly to people disrespecting his family at all. No, and especially women. He was definitely against anyone picking on a woman. He hated woman beaters or even people that made snide remarks at women. Right, as everyone should, because, violence against women from men is very frowned upon and shouldn't happen in society. Now, the next question I have for you, and I want to say how much I appreciate this interview. The next question I have for you is, Granddad used to work for, what was his name at the beach? Something Wiggers? Wiggers Boat Yacht place. Wiggers Boat Yacht. Yeah. Now, did Granddad give a lot of free time and not get paid for a lot of his duties? Yes. He did it out of the generosity of his own heart? When people came in to dock, my father would show them where to dock up, tell them what the rules were, and help them in assistance in getting information on what they needed or where they could go to get things. And he did that mostly out of the goodness of his heart. And I think the gentleman at the lake, could have been a little more nice to recompensate him for it, but that was Dad's way to help out. Right. He didn't want the money. He just wanted to know that he could help out any way he could. Yeah. He did that from a time, like when I was young, he worked for the railroad, and then he come up and he worked for Duplate in Oshawa, and then he finally ended up going to General Motors, where he worked until he retired, other than the layoffs. But every one of those places, he always had people that he would go and help on a weekend, or friends that relied on him because without pay. Because what he knew and the way he was. Yes. So in general, you'd say Golden Glove was a very generous man, and he would never ask for thanks or expect something from his goodwill. No. If he expected pay, it was always known beforehand that that's what was wanted, but. most times, if someone just asked him for help, he'd be ready to lend a hand.
He'd give you the shirt off his own back if need be.
He had in the past.
He literally has given his own shirt.
He gave guys. It happened at the lake down there. I've seen guys down there that gone in swimming and come out, and this was in the fall too, and come out and someone had stolen their clothes.
Really?
Well, I knew a few young lads down there doing pranks like that, but yeah, someone had stolen their clothes, and Dad actually gave one guy a pair of shorts and a shirt to wear to let him get out.
Wow, that's great. I actually have not heard that story. The next question I have for you, now, Granddad's general attire, when he helped people, and he always do the real-life superhero thing back in the day before it was actually called that, because it was probably anywhere from early 40s to, the 70s that he would do all these things for his community. Now, when he did this, he normally wore kind of the button-up shirt, cowboy hat. Did he ever wear his golden gloves out in public, or did he ever wear any real-life superhero attire, like a domino mask or anything like that?
He either wore his jeans and a button-up shirt. Most often, he'd just have a little cap to wear. The Western hat he started more when it was in the 70s. He started wearing more of the Western type hat again, and the boots. But no, his attire was just a simple working man attire, and you'd never know it to look at him.
Alright, so most of his good Samaritan acts were in plain clothes, like civilian clothes, and would he ever wear any of his boxing attire in any of these times? Did he ever wear anything above and beyond?
Not to my knowledge. I don't know about the rest of the brothers and sisters. I'm the only one I think that actually saw him wearing his gloves and sparring a few times. But no, he kept that fairly quiet.
Right, because he didn't want to draw too much of attention to himself, and it wasn't about him. It was about helping others. That's
true. Like most of the people that were acting up had no idea that he was capable of using his fists like that. But and he didn't broadcast it, but he just let them know he wouldn't put up with the nonsense, and he expected them to be fair. And if they weren't going to be fair, then he would have to maybe help teach them.
As unfortunately that's true. Some people don't realize that they do have to respect others, and sometimes there are physical altercations. And I agree that some people do have to be put in their place, because even when people grow into their adulthood, there are bullies per se still, and Granddad did let them know that that wasn't tolerable in that day and age in society, that they weren't going to put up with being bullied or harassed, and people shouldn't have to put up with that.
Right. Well, he was usually known as being very congenial, very, very likable, and if someone really got on his goat, and he had a serious look on his face when he got upset, usually they knew it, and it was like a black cloud in front of them. They didn't want to push it any further. Like I say, there were the odd few that made the mistake of doing that, and he settled that very quickly.
That's good. How was Granddad's relationship with the local police?
It was very good. He quite often donated to their causes. There were a few times when he was actually drinking and driving, and they knew him so well that back then there was very, very little traffic, but a couple of times he'd been pulled over, and they actually said, "Chuck, that's enough of that. We'll give you a ride home. Don't do it anymore." And he got along very well with them. And then with the Old Timers Hockey League, he was helping coach and train them. Quite often, those teams come up against the police teams, and that was always very good. They would actually have him come in and have a beer with them in the dressing room, but they'd tell him, "No, Chuck, only one. We're driving today."
That's pretty nice and humorous. I heard, I don't know if this really pertains to his real-life superhero activities, but I heard from actually my mother that he was part of a suit club of some sort. Can you elaborate on that a bit? Do you know anything about that?
I'm not sure what you're talking about there.
No? Okay.
No. I'm not sure. Maybe perhaps that was after I was grown up and married.
fair enough. All right, hold on a second. All right, returning again with my Uncle Jim, James Wright. We're going to be talking one more time about my granddad, Chuck Wright. My question to finish off this interview is there any major stories or anything that pops out in your mind when we mention your dad, Chuck Wright?
Yes, there were several times. I would say between the time I was 9 years old and 16 years old, 17 years old, several times would we be going camping or on trips to visit family, and every time he saw someone broke down on the highway. There was a case where it was a truck driver broke down, and it was very, very early in the morning, and Father picked him up and took him a ride to the next truck stop. The guy had no telephone, and there would be at least 5 or 6 times I remember that going camping or going to visit families where a car would be broke down. Sometimes it would be a husband and wife and kids, sometimes it'd be just a woman. But he would stop, and he would either, if they had a flat tire, help them, or if there was the engine overheated. He was mechanically enough mind to usually help out in most of those conditions, and if he couldn't, then quite often he would give them a ride into the nearest town or whatever to get help. Back then, we did not have cell phones to be able to reach, so if you needed something, you had to go to the next store or gas station or truck stop to get a phone and get help.
And what time period would this be?
This would be the 1960s. Yeah, from the 1960s until about 70, 1968, 70.
All right, and that's when he did a lot of that. Now, I hate to reiterate and bring back up the boxing thing. I just want to confirm for the interview, what time did Golden Glove, a.k.a. Grandad, do his boxing thing? Do you know what time period?
That would be
1945 to 1955, maybe?
That would be 1946, just after the end of the war.
Right.
He was just too young to go into the war, so he was about 2 years too young. But after the war was over with, he was big enough by then that and he was getting into the point where, again, in the rough neighborhood he was in, he had to learn to take care of himself. He didn't go to the army to do that, so he joined the boxing club. He actually did some work down there to help pay for lessons, cleaning up, and during that time, that's where he took his training.
All right, and was his trainer a Golden Glove themselves?
Yes.
And his trainer did professional boxing, and they stepped in the ring with other professional boxers as well?
Yes.
All right. Now, the reason, like I said, or like you said, sorry, rather, the reason why he took up the boxing is because he lived in a bad neighborhood. Now, do you remember him telling any stories about having to maybe defend others in his neighborhood against street ruffians or gang members possibly, or any friends in his school maybe that he had to defend? Do you remember any stories of him telling stuff like that?
Not per se like that. I do remember that it was a rough neighborhood, and you didn't walk out around alone by yourself as a teenager. There were kids down there that were very rough and not as big a gangs as they have now, but they'd hang out in 2 or 3, and there were bullies around, and that's what I said. He had to learn to take care of himself and his family.
And so I guess even at a young adult, older teenager age, he was very assertive, and he was very adamant about protecting the ones he loved and others in the community even then?
Yes.
That's good. Now, what city was it that that took place in?
That was Belleville. It
was in Belleville that he did all his boxing training, and where the hard neighborhood was?
Yes.
All right, that's good. Now, before... I'm sorry, I'm trying to recap here. When Grandad eventually had you and the rest of my aunts and uncles, your brothers and sisters, what was his kind of elderly family life like? What community events did he take place in, and what different things did he do then as he got older?
mainly his interests and things like that. He, like I said, he joined a bunch of guys that were buying up, building up, fixing up old motorcycles and stuff like that. So as a group, he worked with them. Then he got into the scuba diving, where he actually helped. Once he got his license, then they formed a club for General Motors, Scuba Diving Club, and he helped train with them. And that was his kind of thing. Whatever kind of club he joined, he was always into helping out, volunteering to help with whatever it was he was in on.
All right, so basically anyone who knew him throughout his life recognized the Golden Glove as a helpful person, someone who would go out of his way to make sure that you were safe, make sure that you were comfortable, and make sure that you had what you needed to go on with the rest of your day. Did he ever do anything for the homeless? Did he ever maybe, make a sandwich or give them some of the lunch he didn't need at work?
There was examples of many people my age will remember the strawberry fields were going on, and we had loads and loads of young teenagers come down to the lake where we lived and camped out, and he allowed them. They had nowhere else to go. He allowed them to camp right on our front lawn.
Nice.
And he would bring them out food, and if they were short on stuff, can I get you anything like that? And some of them, they'd come in groups in vans, and some of them needed to go into town, and the rest of the guys were partying or gone. He'd sometimes give them a ride uptown, pick up things they needed.
Free of charge?
Yes.
The goodness of his own heart?
Yes.
Nice. That is, I actually did not know that either. Yeah. I'm glad I'm able to spend the time with you, Uncle Jim, and ask the questions that I'm able to do. All right, I guess this is the last bit of the interview, and once again I want to thank you for your time and appreciate you doing this for me. Is there any last words or any last memories you would like to share with those hearing the interview about the Golden Glove?
Well, I think one of the things that I think formulated his idea was he was a very avid reader of Western novels, and his idea, the hero, was the lone cowboy who wouldn't stand with someone picking on neighbors or picking on the weak, and
like the Lone Ranger.
Like the Lone Ranger type of thing, yeah. Nice. And that was his philosophy in life, is to help out those who need a hand.
Great, thank you. Well, I appreciate the interview, Uncle Jim, and I've been meaning to do this for a while because there has been a few people online and otherwise questioning the legitimacy of Golden Glove's legacy, and this definitely contributes a lot to all of the things I've been trying to say about him and dedicate to him online, and this will definitely help prove all of the things that I have been trying to say. I like to take one last opportunity to say that it's been an honor to been your nephew for all these years and been able to share the lineage of the Wright name, and thank you very much.
You're quite welcome, Tim. Thank you.